Sharon Connolly, welcome to the pod. Nice to be speaking to you again. Now, for everybody watching and listening, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and what's keeping you busy right now.
So good to be here again, Daniel. We spoke, first time probably about 3 or 4 years ago. So it's good to touch base again. I am mainly known for being a change manager. So I have a company called Change Superhero, which does change management. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, we do the hand holding for change managers, do the hand holding when something changes in an organization, a new system, an upgrade to an existing system, moving from building A to B. We handhold people. So the simplest way that I like to explain it is in a supermarket, if the bread was moving from aisle 1 to aisle 3, I make sure that everybody's still getting toast in the morning. And this involves so many moving parts. And where we sort of cross paths is that I, like you, am a Microsoft geek. I love everything Microsoft. And I teach and urge change managers to tell their story using the technology that they've already got. One of those things is SharePoint, which is such a valuable way for them to pass information in a single source of truth, one place, to the people that they're guiding on that journey. So that's what I do, and that's what keeps me busy.
Very good. You touched on a very important point there around the single source of truth. Now, that's the one of the main reasons organizations do move to SharePoint is to have that single source of truth, whether that is content on pages or whether it's documents, most likely documents at the initial outset. But it does, SharePoint does provide and give you that platform if used correctly.
Yes.
Now, another thing that, we were chatting the other day prior to recording this, and we were talking about intranets and how large scale they are. But then we moved on to what you specialize in as well, is around this concept called microsites and how you utilize microsites to help facilitate that change. So tell me a little bit about this microsite concept.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that that's a term that I use to explain. It's not a different type of technology, but organizations don't know how to do this, and there's no right answer. But some of the things that I get them to explore is that, first of all, and you would have this, is that so many people think SharePoint is just a document store. And it's so much more than that. So for anybody who's listening who doesn't understand this, one of the things that Dan does is he goes and creates this amazing internal website, which you would call your intranet, the home for everything from new starter documentation to health and safety policies, like the place that you go to find everything about this organization. Now, what I get them to think about doing is when a project is happening, or if a particular department wants to let people know more about, hey, what do we do here? I get them to explore the option of maybe don't put that on the main intranet site, maybe create your own little site, which I call a microsite. And the benefit is that you guys have got more flexibility about what you create and how you look after it and how you keep it up to date. And I will say, on the main intranet, put a little paragraph or perhaps a page that says, hey, we're moving to a new building. And then I would say, put a link that says, to find out more about this new building, click here. And it takes you to their site, which is the equivalent of an online brochure or an app. And I would say explore having a main site with almost like these little spider sites that have their own personality, but you've got to figure out whether that's right for the organization and the benefits of doing that.
One thing that I guess lends itself, a topic is around sort of theming and branding and company values and that type of thing. So do these microsites tend to stay, I guess, on brand with an intranet, or do you think they work better when they've kind of got their own, as you say, personality?
Yeah, I think that they work better when they've got their own personality, but it's quite often a bone of contention with an organization because we have got the internal branding department, internal communications, that has spent a lot of money deciding what's our tone? What's our colors? What do we use? And the thing is that is 100% necessary when the organization communicates externally. But internally, I think that if you've got a little microsite for the EA's community of practice, or the change manager's community of practice, or the new process for expenses, I think it's actually really helpful that if when somebody clicks through, they realize they're in a different place. They realize there's a different tone or there's a different mood, and sometimes organizations actually have really smart ones, have a different internal brand and an external brand. So one place that I worked that was really great at doing this was the Star Casino. Mm-hmm. Their external brand is quite high roller. It's very premium, but their internal brand is all about, you guys are here to give our guests a great experience. It's about fun and you bringing your whole self to work. So their internal brand was very playful, but their external brand was very high end. And if they're allowed to do so, I think it's great to have different brands and different personalities for different departments, if they're allowed to do so. But sometimes they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, because obviously, as you mentioned before, the intranets depending on governance structures and things like that, you can be restricted to what you can and can't do. So having more flexibility and control in these microsites can become extremely helpful as well. I often speak to customers about how SharePoint, depending on projects and things like that, a SharePoint project, an intranet can help facilitate lots of other things that are happening and change that are happening across an organization. So it does give you that platform. Now, do you think that there would be these microsites per different types of change? So you spoke before about, rolling out a new ERP system could be one site, changing bread from one aisle to the next so that you do get your toast in the morning. Do they become sort of their own separate entities?
Yes. Yeah. Quite often. So I'll often find, unless things are really closely linked. So an example of where you might have one site and a number of changes is if you have got, say, a digital transformation, if you've got an area that is uplifting a few systems, it might all come under the umbrella of our 2-year digital transformation. And you might find the smaller bits there about, we're changing this field, we're putting cybersecurity in. That might come under one bit, but you tend to find the microsites for each change and for the smaller communities of practice to collaborate as well. These, no matter how much you educate them, people will always do these things really badly sometimes because they don't know what good looks like. So people are busy doing their jobs. They've got no idea about heading hierarchy or the fonts or the colors that go together. Everybody's doing their best. But one of our challenges is that people just simply don't know what good looks like.
Well, what does good look like? Tell me.
Well, it's subjective and it's different things. It's different things to different people. And when I'm teaching people about document layout and, if we're trying to get them to create a playbook or something like that, a document that somebody's going to read, I say to them, open a newspaper, open a magazine, look at what a professional graphic designer has done in terms of types of pictures and types of layouts, and see if you can copy that or be inspired by that. Don't reinvent the wheel. I'm like a crazy person on a Sunday taking pictures of magazine layouts and newspapers. Like, I really like how they put that picture with the text there. I think I'll see if I can replicate that in PowerPoint. Don't, stand on the shoulders of giants who already know what they're doing and think, I like how that looked. I think I'm going to recreate that.
And how important do you think, especially when you're building out SharePoint sites, how you are restricted in some ways in a lot of ways to what you can customize, obviously.
Yes.
But one thing that does make a huge impact is imagery or iconography and that type of thing. So how important do you think that is when you're building out these sites?
It's really important, and it's one of the things that for me makes the sites that I create stand head and shoulders above others. And it's a very small consideration. I mean, going back to the point that you made a minute ago, which is actually a blessing, that in SharePoint there's only a certain number of things that you can do. And it's very frustrating sometimes because people will say, well, can I have 4 columns, or can we have that column a bit wider? And I'll say, no, you can't. This is, you know, unless you go into the designer, which I wouldn't advise you to do. It's good because there are about 50 things that you can do. And once you accept these are the things that I can do and you know how to do that, you know them all. Pictures makes a massive difference, and it's about consistency. So it's about choosing pictures with a colored theme. So whatever branding that you have chosen, whether you're using your organization's brand or whether you're using one of the SharePoint color schemes, let's just say that one of your colors is purple. You want to look for, whether you're looking for pictures of corporate pictures, okay, of people walking upstairs, people going on a journey, people taking a car journey. You're looking for things with purple in them to give you this harmony in your site there, and you're looking for a theme. So I've done travel before. So working at CBA with their yellow, it was really easy to find yellow buses or yellow lines painted on the road, and we were doing the whole thing about our journey. You go to a free stock photography site, so I use Unsplash, and I go look for travel documents with yellow, and then you use those. There are things that you can do if you're a little bit whizzy with PowerPoint filters and things to change that, but it's about consistency. It's about deciding, am I using cartoons? Am I using studio photography? Am I using fly on the wall photography? Am I using happy natural people, or am I using posed pictures of people with funny hats? None of them are wrong, but whatever you decide to use, be consistent, so that as people go from page to page, or if they download a presentation, they know I'm in the right place. I'm in the place where I'm, not like, I've gone to am I on a different page? Am I on a different site? It's about consistency.
And we don't have to be using, high-end graphic Photoshop and all that sort of stuff to be creating these. I mean, you're obviously proficient in PowerPoint. It's a tool that you use quite regularly, and basically built a business around, really.
Yeah.
Now, how do you use PowerPoint to actually help enhance the SharePoint site?
Well, you don't need that many tools in PowerPoint to create the images. You need to find your source, which, if you're looking for free stuff, inside PowerPoint, there's some good stock photographs inside PowerPoint, or as I mentioned, Unsplash. There's probably lots of others as well. And the only thing that you really need to be able to do in PowerPoint is to crop the image. So you need to be able to crop it to the appropriate size, maybe write some text over it and save it. That's all you need to do. That's all the skills that you need. I mean, there's some other fancy stuff that you can do if you want to create quotes and call outs and tiles, but it's really just being able to download, crop the image to the size that you want, and then save it as a JPEG or a PNG, and then bring it into SharePoint.
What about when you're teaching, or when you're onboarding people or helping people build out these SharePoint sites?
Yeah.
Are there any best practices around, landing pages or navigation, or, areas where, I guess, are common where people get stuck, I guess, in terms of creating this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I start off by saying it doesn't matter if you stuff it up. You don't have to get it right first time, because one of the reasons that we want people to go towards these living SharePoints is that they can change as your project changes and grows. If we're talking about a change project, when you're starting it, you're saying, hello, we're the project. Why are we making this change? When's it going to happen? Who are the people involved? That's all you've got at the beginning. And then as we go through the journey and we've got updates, we'll add things like stakeholder videos, sponsor videos. We might add quick reference guides, action lists, surveys. But we start with just a couple of pages. So at the beginning, you have got no idea whether you're going to have 50 pages because we don't necessarily know how the project is going to progress. From a change perspective as well, until we've started to talk to people to understand their pain points and what we need to change, we don't know how many quick reference guides we're going to have. We don't know whether our learning is going to be videos. We don't know a lot of this stuff. So we start small. And we think about a style that is consistent, that we can continue to use. We try not to change the style as we go through it. And we also need to think about who looks after it when we're gone. It's all very well me being there and being a whiz with PowerPoint and being able to create this fancy stuff. I need to do it in a way that when I'm gone, somebody else can do this. They can take care of this site if it needs to live once the project is gone. But I say to people, look, if we can get a rough idea of you'll come home and then what your menu might look like, then that will help you. But don't stress, because if you don't have a plan from day one, you can make it up as you go along and you can add things. And this is the benefit, because if I'm creating a brochure and I'm getting the graphic designers to design it and then I'm having 500 of them printed, can't change my mind. Whereas in SharePoint, one of the benefits is, we're going to do it a different way, because lots of projects are run in what we call agile methodology, is that people go, we thought that this was going to be the way we're going to go. Actually, we're not. No, we're going a different way now. So we want people to be able to change their mind and to pivot very, very easily. SharePoint lets them do that.
I think that's a key thing with any SharePoint project I'm finding, is that you need to explain, especially for when people are coming from more of a structured waterfall type of approach. SharePoint projects and really M365 projects in general, you really need to have that flexibility and fluidity to be able to change direction, pivot where we need to, because something that happened yesterday, that might change tomorrow. So we need to have that flexibility. And you're right, when you creating documents or those types of things, they're a little bit harder to change than just jumping into SharePoint and adjusting things as needed.
There's also a technology learning journey as well, because I'm going to go in and I've got a toolkit of Microsoft expertise, but when I'm teaching somebody to set this up, in my head, I know that they might want SharePoint lists with Power BI, and then they need some Power Automate and stuff. I'm not going to tell them that and overwhelm them. I can see where it could go, but I want to empower an EA to set up a site that they're proud of, that gets the information in. And then when I go back and I see them in a month's time, I go, okay, so now we're going to embed some SharePoint forms in that. And now, so let's have a look at the information that's coming in from those SharePoint forms. Perhaps we could just add a little bit of Power Automate in there to get some automatic messages. You're not going to tell people that from day one. Maybe you're never going to tell them, but they could be on a technology journey where you are guiding them to learn and to get excited about new things that they could do. And one of the challenges that we've got as people who love all of the products in Microsoft is to like rein it in and not tell people too much too soon.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's quite easy for you and I to get carried away and start to look at that sort of future state before tackling the bite-sized bits first. And then all of a sudden, and the way that I know the way that you work and the way that I work as well is when you're working, you're almost coaching them as opposed to sort of project delivery. You're kind of becoming their partner, their coach, that type of thing. And at the end of a 4-week engagement, their levels and their skill levels in SharePoint, they're probably at a point where they're able to then take that knowledge that you've imparted on them and then them impart that on other people in the organization as well. So it kind of has that overarching benefit as well.
And you want to do that. I mean, that's something that change managers do, but also Microsoft and MVPs do as well. You know, we want to raise the organizational maturity in technology and in change, no matter how long we're there for, whether we're there for 3 days or whether we're there for 3 years. We want to leave a legacy. We want to leave an organization more mature in terms of change and in technology than when we started. And we also want to inspire people to go, you know, I thought that this was tough, but actually, no, I've got this. And this is, you know, this is what makes MVPs really special, is that we can't keep this information in. We need to let it out.
What about a homepage? What is a good homepage? What should a homepage or a landing page of one of these change sites sort of have on it?
Well, it should make people want to stay there and find out more. So first of all, it lets them know I'm in the right place. Okay, so what have I come here for? Am I going to find what I need here? It should be very clear about what actions they're supposed to take. What have we got here for you to have a look at? It should be quite clear on what the navigation is. So how do we get from A to B? And we need to recognize that some people will prefer to do this via tiles. Some people might get here from a link rather than search for it. But I think they need to be very clear that I'm in the right place and I know what to do here. But the other thing that I'm looking for is, for a change project, why are you coming back here? What have we got on here that's making you aware that you need to come back here next week and next month? So is there some type of rolling news? Is there some type of thing that's changing, some type of text that says you need to come back here next week to find out what's going on in the future? Whether it be the FAQs or a sponsor interview, something like that, let them know, come back here regularly.
What's your favourite web part?
Ooh.
On the spot.
Yeah. Oh, people, the people directory.
Okay.
People. So for anybody who doesn't know what that is, and you see people who don't know that this is in there, they create a page with little photographs of the people who are on their team. And there's actually a part where inside your organization, you just type in people's names and you get their picture if they've got it uploaded. And I love the fact that you get to put a different description. You know, you can put depending what's everybody in this project's favorite sandwich.
Yeah. And I think what I find myself doing, what works, what works really well is, you know, page templates as well in SharePoint. I think are kind of underutilized as well. But part of page templates, that people web part is having a page contact. So I would assume in sort of change programs as well, you might have an informational page about something. But people need to ask questions or they need to find out more. So they need a kind of a contact person. So a lot of times that's a staple on pages, is having that page contact, because you hover over it and you get, you know, depending on how mature their Active Directory is, how populated it is, you get all that information, which is pretty key as well.
With this, and the same thing there, I like to make keeping the SharePoint up-to-date collaborative. And I like to have some type of methodology or some type of reporting, which would normally just be a little form that says, spotted something out of date, have we missed something? This is how you notify us if a link is broken or something isn't working. Because one of the challenges that you particularly have with the intranet, and we still have with the microsites, is keeping information up to date.
Yeah.
This is an important consideration when people are planning. Okay, we're going to put it all in here, but how are we going to keep it up to date? How are we going to replace all of these templates? Who's going to change these people contacts when people come and go? So I like to make it a team-wide or an organization-wide task to keep things up to date and let people know. Don't just go, oh, this site was all out of date. Tell them.
How have you found? It's an interesting point. How have you found the best way to do that? Have you found that a link in the navigation or the footer to a Microsoft form or something like that that works?
a link to a form. So a link to a form, it pops up a Microsoft form, and then that Microsoft form sends an email to somebody saying this page is out of date.
Yeah. And well, another question then, and well, I guess it's almost best practice, but documents versus pages. So let's say we've got all of our, lots of information in a, you mentioned quick reference guides before. A lot of times people are creating those in Word or PowerPoint or things like that. How do you see, creating them as actual files as opposed to SharePoint pages?
I will always encourage them to be created as SharePoint pages.
Yeah.
And the reason is because so many people read things on their phone. So if you create an A4 PDF and you send it to somebody and then they're sitting on the bus trying to read this on their phone, they're like stretching and pinching and trying to look at this document as a PDF on their phone. Whereas if you create it as a SharePoint page, no matter how they look at it, it's going to re-render. So your images and your text are going to sort themselves out for the phone or the tablet or however you're reading. I have noticed a trend, people do still like a downloadable PDF. And I've noticed a bit of a trend where what's happening, and I say, if you do have to do this, consider creating skinny, very, very skinny PDFs. Because if you create like a tall, skinny PDF, as if it was going to be read on the phone, if I'm reading it on my laptop, I can still read it. But if you create a portrait, a landscape PDF, PowerPoint, it's incredibly difficult for me to read that on my phone. So try, if you can find out what are the habits of the people who are consuming your information, design for the majority of them. And I always try to get them to go down the page route rather than the document route.
I've seen hybrids as work quite well as well when you're embedding documents into the SharePoint page. So you've kind of got the power of the SharePoint page where you can add all your web parts, but then you've also got part of a document or something in a PDF or a Word document that's embedded on the page. A lot of when organizations are sort of in a transition, this is more intranet based, but policies and procedures, they haven't converted all their policies and procedures across to SharePoint pages, but we're kind of in this hybrid mode, so that can work quite well.
Because wherever you put things, there's always valid reasons, or you want to be exploring the valid reasons for. So it's a Word document. Why do we want it as a Word document? Because of tracking changes, because of bookmarks, because of different hyperlinks to different parts. There's a good reason for something to be in a Word document, and there's a good reason for a PowerPoint, and there's a good reason for a SharePoint page. Just make sure that you're aware of, no, this has to be a Word document because we need a table of contents, because we need to do revision tracking, because it needs an index. So have it as a Word document if you've got good reasons to have it as a Word document. If there's no reasons, have it as a page. Pages don't print out well. I mean, you're more across all of the technical details than I am, but we still have we got bookmarks yet in SharePoint?
As in bookmarking a page?
Or you can say a heading. A heading. So at the top, can I jump down?
Links. Yeah. In title, so you can grab a link to the titles when you're adding sections. So you can add sections and the section headings. You can grab the link. Yeah.
Is that new, or did I just miss it?
Or relatively well. No, it's been there for a bit. So how you've got your collapsible sections and things like that. Yeah. So you can grab the link to the section. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there you go. There's something I've learned. I didn't know that, because that would be something that people would often struggle with, is when you want to do an FAQs, how do you jump to the particular part of the FAQs? How do we get to all of those? And then the collapsible sections came in. So, I mean, that brings us to another point, is that how do people stay up to date with all of the all of the new things. Well, of course, they follow your Saturday and Sunday newsletter to tell them all of the new things. But it is difficult to stay up to date with all of these things.
Do you? I mean, that'd be something that I imagine could potentially be a site across organisations. There's a lot of information that comes out though. But keeping people, abreast of what these changes are, or the key changes anyway.
It doesn't happen, unfortunately. Most of the time it doesn't happen. The only place where I was where it did happen really well was AMP. And they had, we had a fab rep from Microsoft that used to come in and do a monthly update. Yeah. And then I was part of one of the task force of people who would go, we would listen to the new stuff that he would be telling us. And then we would go and tell our departments. Yeah. And I, in there, would create newsletters for them. But I've never seen that anywhere else. Never at all. I go in and I start them off on tip of the day and, some of the basic shortcuts and functionalities. But most of the time it's not there. And it's really needed because knowing the shortcuts, knowing how to do these things well, frees up people to do what they're employed for, to have the conversations, to write the really good content instead of grappling trying to get boxes to line up in PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's right. Now,
or spending ages manually creating what a web part does, and they hadn't realized it was there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, interesting, fascinating conversation. Now, as we wrap things up, where there's going to be a lot of people that are watching and listening that are wanting to know more about what you do and all of this information. So, where's the best place for people to follow you? You do a lot of content, obviously. You've got a great website,
changesuperhero.com.au.
Where do people connect with you?
I put loads of stuff on LinkedIn, so I give away tons of PowerPoint templates. Yeah, loads. Normally about 3 or 4 every week, and you can go to the website and you can download them. But if you go to the website, there's a newsletter. Yeah. And what my newsletter does is that I have I think I'm on tip 140 now. So if you join my newsletter, you get tip 1, then 4 days later, you'll get tip 2 and so on. So you'll go through this. I do then do a weekly, what's new this week newsletter, but every one of those newsletters will give you a shortcut or a tip that you didn't know. Sometimes you'll get a template, but it will be one tiny thing. I love it when people email me and they go, "Oh, it changed my life." And that's a tip that I might have written 2 years ago. And they'll go, "Who knew that you could right click and you could swap a graphic?" Wow. And different things hit the mark for different people. But somebody's going to read it and go, "Yeah, whatever, I knew that already." And then somebody's going to go, "Whoa." So many of the MVPs do newsletters. Lots of people who are experts in Microsoft will give away their expertise in newsletters. So I do one where you get a tip of the week every 4 days. Join that. And then that'll keep you up to date with the content that I'm doing as well. But I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Very good. I'll put your LinkedIn links in the show notes so everybody can connect with you. But once again, good chatting, some great insights there and some great knowledge sharing there for people to get started with their microsites in SharePoint. In adjacent to, obviously, the intranet. But thanks for sharing. Thanks for jumping on. And we'll certainly do this again.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.